The date is June 1979. Trucks rolled into refugee camps in Thailand. For weeks, Cambodian families believed they were safe under the protection of relief workers and the United Nations. When the trucks arrived, many thought they were taken to a safer place. Instead, the journey ended at the edge of the Dangrek Mountains. More than 40,000 refugees were forced back at gunpoints into landmines, cliffs, and danger. This event became the largest refugees forced return in modern history. This is the story of the Dangrek Genocide. But to understand the event, we need to first go back in time to see how it all happened. As a kid, I always heard stories of the Khmer Rouge from documentaries, different museums, and the survivors where they talk about the killings, the genocide, the starvation which left the country of Cambodia to become a nation of ruins. And as I get older, I realized there are more to the Pol Pot regimes, there are more to the killing field, there are more to all of these stories that I could have imagined. And it all began in the great chessboard of the Cold War. Cambodia became the scapegoat, a small square where giants fought for power.
Cambodia is the latest battleground of Indochina. On one side, the country is flanked by communist Vietnam, on another by non-communist Thailand, and above Cambodia, Laos.
I felt their traumas as I sat down, listened to their stories about the bombings, about the sirens, about seeing entire villages obliterated in seconds. The visuals and the sounds of the bombs like thunder splitting the sky. And from 1965 all the way to 1973, the United States of America dropped over 2.7 million tons of bombs on Cambodia, the same as setting off the Hiroshima bomb 150 times. It was called a spillover from the Vietnam War, but in reality, for a country with fewer than 8 million people, Cambodia was bombed more per capita than Vietnam, making it the most heavily bombed country per person in modern history. And while powerful nations fought for influence, it was ordinary Cambodians who paid with their lives. And all of the powerful nations have their hands in the war, but they were never here in Cambodia. They moved all the pieces, and we paid the price. When the dust cleared, the world moved on. The bomb had stopped, but the war had only changed its shapes. The world attention then shifted elsewhere, and in the silence that followed, Cambodia were left alone with the Khmer Rouge. That had brought the genocide, the starvation, the killings, and the fear. However, there is a part of the story that is usually left out. It is a story of another genocide, which happened to the refugees of Cambodia.
We met here. That message said quite simply that the Cambodian refugees we filmed last time had been betrayed, forced back into Cambodia on the orders of the Thai government.
To understand more about the Dangrek Genocide, I have gone over countless United Nations reports from the 1970s and the 1980s. I want to get my head around this cruel act, an act that is so devoid of humanity.
What's now known as East forced back into Cambodia to sickness and, in many cases, probably death.
How did you feel when you found out that they had been sent back inside Cambodia?
I felt very sad. Inside I was crying, and so were a lot of other people.
In June 1979, Thai soldiers rounded up more than 42,000 Cambodian refugees to border camps and pushed them down the steep mountainside at Previhir into Cambodia. At least several hundred people and possibly several thousands were killed in the minefield below. And according to a report from the United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees, that is the largest instance of forced return the organization has ever seen since it was founded. But to understand in depth about the story behind the Dangrek Genocide, I want you to first understand this. I tried to imagine what is worse than living in a genocidal regime, and I believe the answer is living in an illusion, the false hope of being alive where you are safe just to die. You have to imagine how it feels to be a refugee to understand their pain. Because nobody wants to be refugees. Nobody wants to flee from their own homes. But the fact that these people who are not communist, they are mostly, as stated by the United Nations report, they are mothers, children, farmers caught in a war they didn't start. Yet, with no remorse, they were forced to walk back into the minefield, into the dense jungle, with no supplies, not even water. You see, during the last breath of the Khmer Rouge regime, the Khmer Rouge lied to Cambodian citizens that the Vietnamese would kill them all. And so the people heard that and they fear for their lives. So where do those farmers, those mothers and children try to go next? They ran to the border. They ran to the mountain.
For this, they decided to push them back. Money is not the problem. There is money to provide whatever assistance is necessary. The money is there to help, but the permission to help is not. We are not being given permission to provide assistance.
So we are at a point where all of these refugees have been deceived by the Khmer Rouge, saying that the Vietnamese will kill all of them. And all of them fled west toward the Thailand's border. But crossing into Thailand's border did not bring them the safety that they hoped for. Instead, they fell into another layer of propaganda set up by the Thai's military. And so, once again, these refugees are being used as pawn for another propaganda. I have gone through a lot of United Nations reports, documents, and even book like this one, Equality Mercy on Chapter 4, where Thailand seems to present itself as a generous neighbor, almost like a humanitarian sanctuary. And I have left all the sources in the description below, but essentially, when presenting themselves as such, the reality was entirely different. These refugees were confined in a border, and their presence, by being there as a refugees, it was used as a political tool. Specifically, they were used as a buffer, as a human shield against the Vietnamese. As stated by a lot of these reports, it was to protect Thailand's soil. These camps became staging ground for a resistance group where arms and money flowed with Thai approval. Even the flow of international aid was managed to serve Thai's foreign policy goals. And once Thailand used all of these refugees long enough, they were essentially discarded, forced back into the mines, forced back into the cliff of Dangrek Mountain. And on this matter, there are many criticisms coming from all different perspectives, which I highly encourage you to check. But I would say the main questions that were asked is, why play the double game? Why on the international stage present yourself as a humanitarian sanctuary when in reality there is a clear ulterior motive toward these refugees who are, again, mothers, children and farmers?
The army has the right to push them back anytime they want to.
But they are refugees, aren't they? Plainly, they're refugees.
These are civilian people who have fled from the fighting. They're in fear of their lives if they go back. They're fleeing from danger. They're refugees. Mind you, these are refugees and they need to be helped.
Up to the boss, I have very little bag, so I cannot set up.
Yes, but it's you who loads them on the trucks at the end of the day, isn't it?
For that day, yes, like it did. Let them move. But the person who carry them is not my duty.
However, looking back in history on that very years, Thailand's plans of being a humanitarian sanctuary was working, and from the outside, the images matched the narrative. Tents were stamped with UNHCR logo, long lines for food and water, children clutching their parents as aid workers handed out supplies, and Thai officials shaking hands with foreign diplomats. On paper, it was a story of rescue. But the same report did not follow where the road ended. They never show the truck turning away from safety, or the forced marches that led not forward but back into the hills, the hill full of mines, back into the very nightmare they had just escaped. And that is why I want you to understand the pain of being lied to. Nobody wants to be refugees. Everyone just wants to survive. But what is worse than dying is believing you are saved only to be led to your death. Now, it is important to understand that many relief workers had no idea what was about to happen. They worked inside the camps, following the rules set by the host country. And in Thailand, all of those rules are enforced by the military, governed by its monarch. And some border camps were closed to outsiders where access are restricted, and visits from journalists and relief workers are tightly controlled by the military. However, the official narrative that Thailand put out to the world stayed the same, that it is a temporary refuge for people to stay until resettlement or a safety return. But in June of 1979, trucks rolled in.
After just one day they came to us. The Thai soldiers came with the bus and said that we can go to a third country now.
They told us, you're going to Bangkok, to a refugee camp in Bangkok. So there's this mixed feeling of fear and happiness.
Refugees were told they were being moved. Upon hearing that, some of the refugees expressed feeling of anxiety, but also with a mix of happiness, believing that they are promised a safe return. However, those are just empty promises. After the first batch of refugees, which were the Cham, the Muslims, and many other Cambodians were moved, rumors started in the camp.
The next day, we heard a rumor that those people being forced back to the border.
And as rumors started in the camps, many refugees started doubting the Thai's army actions. But when they tried to voice their concerns, saying that they want to remain at the camp, guns were pointed at them. They were beaten, children and women being forced onto the trucks. Survivors spoke of seeing Western relief workers seeing all of these actions, but can't do anything against the Thai's military, but just to cry over the refugees.
Bus drove us 14 hours that night.
What happened was they had about several tens of thousands of refugees scattered in various camps along the Cambodian-Thai border. The Thai government, for some reason, decided that it was going to push these people back to Cambodia.
The 14-hour drive led them to an isolated area of Previhir Temple at the edge of the Dangrek Mountain. And many critics believe the decision to force the refugees through Previhir was not just about geography. Only 17 years earlier, Thailand's occupation of Previhir Temple had ended in humiliation for Thai's monarchy, when the International Court ruled Previhir belonged to Cambodia. And for some, choosing this deadly path over a safer trail carried a bitter symbolism. a reminder by Thai written in blood. And on the day of the massacre, the image was clear. These refugees were dehumanized. Because I want you to imagine this. We have hundreds, probably thousands of these soldiers with guns leading these civilians to an isolated area in the mountain. The civilians who are mothers, children and father were stripped away from their right to ask for help. They were forced in a positions where they cannot even choose a safer trail to walk back to Cambodia. And when they tried to beg for help, they were made an example by getting shot.
As you can see, the cliff is so steep down. And they keep gunning us down.
Some survivor testimonies spoke of seeing pleasures in the face of some of the soldiers. Essentially, all of these refugees have their choice limited to either choosing a crocodile or a tiger, which is the same as choosing between a bullet and a mine. And so they were forced to return to their country by risking their lives going down this mountain as rocks are thrown at them, even while they were forced down the cliff back to their own country. And what happened next was cruelty in its rawest form. Tens of thousands of Cambodians were forced down the cliff. There were no safe trails, only jagged rock, dense jungle and minefield, and so people slipped and fell to their death, and wounded men's and women's children's were left where they fell, because to stop was also to risk dying, and explosions killed hundreds if not thousands.
They want us to walk on those landmines and then very few survive, and it would make a good lesson that we will never come back to Thailand. They want to kill as many refugees as they can. So walking 40,000 refugees through the deepest mountain with no water and with gun behind us, that's one way to kill people.
And after thousands of refugees started walking down the mountains, those who stayed at the top, who have no food, who received no help, who had no supplies, they had no choice but to go down the path as the dead. And as they climbed down, the horrendous smell of corpses engulfed them, and the visual of bodies of those who had died before them have become clearer. They were cold, they were thirsty, they were starving, and so they scavenge anything they can to survive, getting UN blankets from corpses, drinking their own urine, and washing blood out of the rice of those who stepped on landmines.
Then the landmines exploded. And when it exploded, they all died. And the people that didn't have food ran to grab the bloody rice off of the dead bodies, just to have something to eat. They had to wash the blood off the rice and cook it.
Survivors tells a mother carrying babies in one arm and holding a child's hands with the other, only to have that hand ripped away in an instant from minefield. They tell of entire families vanishing in the chaos, swallowed by the dark or by the earth itself. Relief agencies were restricted. Journalists weren't there, and in the United Nations' own report from that week, the events were described only in broad and vague terms. No photograph. For days, the world knew nothing. The camps were silent, the official narrative unchanged.
We heard the planes, the sound of planes flying through. We thought someone come to help us. 43,000 refugees cry out for help. But no one come for us.
But then survivors started to emerge. walking not for days but for weeks, crawling out of the jungle. They reached safer ground and they told their stories, first to aid workers, then to journalists, and soon to anybody who would listen. They spoke of the cliffs, they spoke of the mine, they spoke of the scream, the explosions. They named the friends and families they had lost, and they revealed to the world that the place of refuge had become a place of massacre. What I have shared with you are just 30% of the horror that the survivors have gone through. But the message was clear to the world and many of those who didn't go through this tragedy. This was a rescue gone wrong. But to the survivors who went through the experience, through the trauma, it is different. They were dehumanized. They were stripped of their refugee status. They were denied food. They were denied water. They were denied a request for help as they were carried to an isolated area, and they were driven back at gunpoint into minefields. These refugees were not treated as men, women, and children. But to the words of Thai's military, these refugees were nothing but burden to be pushed away, even if it meant their death. And so the people of Cambodians, the Khmer, stand here today not as victims, but as witnesses. Cambodians have carried all of the weights, all of the trauma of what has happened, but never share them because they don't want to be pitied, but they want to be remembered. And so I make this video so that all of that memories stay. But across the border, there are those who write that they saved Cambodia during the Khmer Rouge years, that their hands reached out in kindness, that Cambodia owes them gratitude. However, the survivors know the truth. They remembered when the truck stopped and where the cliff began. They remembered gun being pointed at them when they tried to beg for help. They remembered walking through all of those dense jungle with no food and supply. They remembered walking inside a jungle filled with mines and seeing fellow friends and family being exploded, arms being ripped out. And as I see so many top government officials saying that Cambodia owed them, and all of Thai citizens actually believing that, it just goes to show how easily history can be rewritten if memories are not repeated. Because the matter of fact is that saving someone from a fire only to push them back into it is not kindness, it's not us owing you gratitude, it is cruelty with a smile. And in my opinion, this story must be told again and again because I have seen history being rewritten. And during the conflict between Cambodia and Thailand now, we've seen the results of that history being rewritten. I believe all Cambodians should speak of this story when they get a chance, especially while they are still here. Because as long as they are alive, as long as a nation lives, the truth will continue to live. And history will not be rewritten, nor can it be twisted. The final part of this video will focus on many aspects of my research on this topic and also how Thailand education view this genocide as a whole. And so the main discussion that took place during the entirety of this research was also related to this 2025 conflict on whether the conflict itself between Cambodia and Thailand will end anytime soon. And so during a shoot, I was asked the questions, and this is basically my response. If I am being honest, no. The problem will probably continue for the next 100 years if Thailand do not accept the fact that It's a country that wants to be ruled by the military. I think that is something that Thailand needs to accept for both sides to continue to live in peace. Because if we look at Thailand's, the regimes barely change in terms of how it's governed. The monarch stays at the top, and then the monarch governs the military. So, in what sense do you think that the monarch would just allow the military to lose its power? For the last 100 years, I believe Thailand has been through about 20 coups where more than 60% of those coups were successful. That is a lot of coups. Even recently, in the 2010s, there was also a military coups as well. And so we can analyze and see that, okay, domestic policy is quite fragile. And then we can look at the next question. We can investigate it, raise the question first, and then do our research. Why does coup happen so easily in Thailand? And that is what I did my research on. I think it ties down to a lot of, I would say, national pride. It ties in a lot of the education aspect in Thailand, where I look into Thai's educations. A lot of the young people, younger generation, I think even kindergarten, they had to be in nationalistic programs, and to a certain extent even a military program, which is insane. Basically, to put your kids in nationalistic programs at a very young age, that is concerning. And in many academic research, it is mentioned that Thailand prioritized the teachings of loyalty to the monarchy and loyalty to the military, which is governed by the monarch. Education in early age prioritized that aspect massively over the ideas of critical thinking, which, by the way, very interestingly, it seems like a lot of teaching in Thai's education really stress on the idea that countries like Cambodians and Laos are ungrateful to them, to their kings in the past, which if you actually read history books that are not written by Thais, it's a completely different story. And that's just one example out of so many examples, which I highly suggest you to do a lot of research on to actually see just how insane the rewriting of history as well as the grooming of these children to be nationalistic people and ultra-nationalist. And right now we can see people on television and even their military saying that Cambodia owed them gratitude during the Khmer Rouge. Insane. And a lot of their spokesperson and even their news outlets outright saying that our country, the DNAs are stupid, we are stupid people because a lot of the Khmer Rouge kill the smart people. I think that is the reason why the conflict will continue for probably generations to come. It's a very pessimistic views, I get it. But the way I see it, these border issues, this idea of politicizing nationalism and then weaponizing nationalism, I don't think it's gonna end. And I think, in my opinion, the ball is in Thailand's court. It's not in Cambodian's court, because in Cambodia, I would say there is not a lot of reason to start this conflict. There is not much Cambodian would gain in terms of politics, in terms of economy, in terms of military power, in terms of logical sense. There is no logical reason that support Cambodia would want to start this war. Whereas in Thailand, we have historical context, we have motives, we have so many history that have been studied, and the facts that a lot of young generation of Thais are not learning about it, that in itself already spell the continuation of conflict. And I get it. I saw a lot of your comments as well saying that let's talk about Cambodia. Yes, everyone in Cambodia knows we have our problems. But just like any other nation, including Thailand, you also have our problems. We all have problems in our nation. But don't let that be the distractions. Please look at the bigger pictures. This is a conflict that goes beyond government problems. It's systemic. It's about education, it's about the rewriting of history, it's about how nationalism is politicized and weaponized. Because if you look at these two countries, Cambodia has constantly changed regimes over time, whereas for Thailand, we can see there is only one thing that is constant, and that is the monarch ruling over its military. And so, I might have to end this video on a pessimistic note, but I don't think this conflict is going to end anytime soon, especially when one side think they are superior over the other side, and especially when one side keeps on promoting the almost xenophobic quality into their programs of teachings and so many more. But I will end this part with this, which is hopefully optimistic, and that is, you don't have to trust me. I'm just a normal guy coming from a low to middle income family and making a YouTube video. That's fine, but just study, learn, and try to explore the world, not just within the scope of what is taught in a country, in a nation, but learn about the world as a human. Because I believe to have the ideas of peace be fully achieved, it comes from goodwill, it comes from willing to listen to the other side and looking into your side as well, because that is what I've been doing. And hopefully the viewers, you can encourage friends to do research, to even read literature from your own professors who are Thai, to see how history has been constructed. I just want to say one thing, and that is, Thailand, just move on. The world has moved on. Cambodians have moved on already. A lot of you are proud that your country has great economy. Good for you, great for you, but move on. Do not take Cambodia into this matter and make Cambodia a scapegoat for your military to once again take power. And I have so much more to say on this, but be a human and a kind one. So this video has been my life for quite a while now. Even as I am editing the video right now, I am reading documents to ensure that everything put inside this video is verified, which is why I have a source in the description down below. And I'm telling you guys this because I don't want this video to go to waste. Because if you don't know, I am a Cambodian, and so I am doing my best to ensure that I put my feeling and emotion aside when telling the story. But if there are cases when I let my emotions slip, I just want you to forgive me and look past that, but to see the actual reporting and to look at the sources I have compiled in that PDF document.